Good morning, good afternoon, dependent on where you are. A very warm welcome to today's webinar. We are going to talk about situational leadership. And today is a beautiful day to create awareness. And that's exactly what we're going to do. So before I begin with what I've brought for you today, let me ask you a quick question. When was the last time that you were in a leadership situation and you did not show up or react or behave the way that you wanted to? You have left that situation, and later on you thought for yourself, that was not how I wanted to show up. That was not what I wanted to say. That was not how I wanted to manage that particular situation. Now, the key to this, why you might not have shown up, why you might not have reacted the way that you wanted to, is self-awareness. It's simply the awareness, the ability that we have about ourselves to understand, I am reacting this way because of a specific thought I had, a specific trigger that just showed up in that moment. Being able to know in that very moment what is happening and what will lead into that situation, what reaction you want to have. That is situational awareness, and that helps us to be able to lead situationally. So without further ado, let's go into today's webinar of situational leadership. What we're going to cover today is basically, a quick introduction of myself for all of those here today who don't know me yet. Then I'll just quickly elaborate on why we are talking about situational leadership today, what it actually is, what the bigger picture is, what your opportunity is when it comes to situational leadership. And then we will have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of this webinar to answer any questions. If you have any questions or comments at any point in time, please just put them into the comment box and they will show up for me here and I can pick them up right away. So why I am here with you today, my name is Sabine. I'm originally from Germany, studied international business and management over there with a few visits in the shape and form of semesters and internships in other countries such as China, South Korea, and Gibraltar. I then later on studied a master in human resource management and another master in coaching and change management. And last year I graduated from my executive MBA. My passion really lies in creating awareness for the people that I work with, because ultimately excellence in what we do, mastery in what we do, is only fully achievable when we have 100% awareness of what we do, why we do it, and how we do it. So in the last about 5 years, I've been spending a lot of time with organizations here in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. And I've been working with big international organizations, coaching senior leadership, mostly director, general management, and C-level. And I have realized quite early on that the challenges that you leaders have are most of the time very, very similar, if not the same. And many of these challenges really are directly connected to situational leadership. So why do we talk about situational leadership now? Ultimately, situational leadership is one of these tools and techniques that make you as a leader stand out. An organization, your peers, your stakeholders, your managers will recognize that you are able to lead in any situation effectively and efficiently. And this is exactly what you need, because right now, as you all know, the situation is rather difficult out there. We still don't know what is happening between Iran and the US. We don't know what the implications are for our region out here. But what we do know for sure, because it already started to show, is that there is an economic shift. We know that people are starting to lose their jobs. And we can see that some organizations are already struggling quite significantly. Now, I am quite certain that this is something that you're very well aware of. And you might be wondering, in how far will this impact me? And how far will that have an effect on my job today? How certain can I be that everything will go as smoothly as it has until today? So, this is your opportunity and your chance to simply also ask yourself, what can I do to level up in my leadership abilities? What can I do to become an even better leader? And one of those options is definitely to look into situational leadership. Now, in order to become a situational leader, we need to create what is called situational intelligence. And I'm quite sure, since you are leaders, if not senior leaders already at this stage, that you are used to continuous development. Continuous development in your case might be that you are reading management books, that you are reading Harvard Business Review, that you're reading any other sources where you know you will find the latest ideas and theories around effective management. Maybe you are listening to podcasts. Maybe there is a favorite YouTube platform that you enjoy and that you are watching on a regular basis. Now, definitely all of these are giving you a lot of understanding about the how and the what, potentially also about the when. But what's oftentimes falling short in all of these is the who. When I'm talking about the who, that's not just who you are leading, the other person that you are engaging with in that situation, but it's also who are you, not just in general, but who are you in this situation? How are you behaving in this situation because of who you are? And ultimately, of course, you can ask yourself, who do you want to be instead? We started to tackle that a little bit in the first webinar 2 weeks ago. It's all about understanding, what is your leadership image? Who do you want to be as a leader? And of course, this is extremely important for your ability to lead in any situation as well. Now, before we continue, let me ask you another question, and I'll give you a few seconds to think about this before I move on. When did you last change your approach mid-conversation because you read the room? Not after a conversation, not before a conversation, but while you were in the conversation. When was the last time you were able to change your approach because you read the room? Many of us have these experiences that they are in a room, presenting, talking to others, negotiating potentially, and they have had a plan up front. They knew in their head, okay, I am going to follow the structure. I am going to say ABC. Probably also because I know that I'm best at this. I am going to use the approach that I usually use. Now, that's absolutely understandable that you might have this understanding and that you might believe that this is going to be successful because it's been successful so many times before. However, what you might not be taking into account in that moment is the actual situation, meaning who is in the room? What is the occasion? What might be different to other occasions in which you might have used the same pitch? What is the overall situation in the organization, in the country, for example? But also, of course, who is in the room with you that day, individually? Who is every single person that you are talking to? And if they are people that you are not used to, people that you don't know yet, then of course it requires a very different approach from the approach that you usually use because you don't have any pre-existent knowledge about these people. So this is where situational leadership is coming in. This is where you are able to adapt to the situation. You're able to adapt to the people who are in the room. You will be able to understand, okay, my approach I'm usually using is not working. and I need to recalibrate. And how do I do that? What do I need to take into account to make this a successful negotiation, a successful meeting? And how you will be able to do this is what we will be covering today. We will be looking at 3 different elements here. The first one is situational awareness. Like we just talked about it, understanding what is the overall situation. How is the mood? What is the reason, the purpose for the situation? What is the urgency of the situation? Then we're going to look into other awareness. Who are the people in the room? What are their interests? How motivated are they in the moment? Self-awareness is our third component here. Self-awareness begins, for example, with your personality, simply knowing what kind of a person am I? Am I rather outgoing? Am I someone who is rather introvert? Am I someone who absolutely loves being challenged on the spot? Am I someone who prefers to be very well prepared for any kind of meeting? Knowing this is extremely important for you to achieve what you can see here in the center, which is situational leadership. Let's take a closer look at this. When we talk about situational awareness, it means that we want to have awareness around 3 different areas here. The first one is, of course, the stakes. What's at stake here? What can I win? What can I potentially lose if this is not going well? What is the urgency? How urgent is it to have an outcome here? How urgent is it to make a decision right here today? And also the relationship context. So who is it that I am talking to from a relationship perspective? Is it a meeting with my team? Is it a meeting with my boss? Is it a meeting with the AG? Or is it a meeting with other external stakeholders I've never met? That is situational awareness. Other awareness, on the other hand, of course, is around the people who are with you in the room. For example, their communication style. Maybe you are having a presentation to run and you have been having or giving this presentation many, many times before. Now, today though, you're in a room full of people who are very passive. They don't proactively ask any questions. They don't proactively comment on anything, but they are very passive. Now the question is, how easily can you adapt to an audience like that? Or the other way around, maybe you have an audience today that is extremely challenging. Maybe they are interrupting you all the time. How are you going to cope with that? Apart from communication style, when we talk about other awareness, we have the cultural context, of course. It's very, very different whether you have a room filled with, and I'm allowed to use that example, a room full of Germans who are extremely direct in their communication, who definitely take the liberty to interrupt you, and who will also give you very, very straightforward feedback, compared to presenting to a room full of, for example, Chinese delegates. With Chinese delegates in the room, of course, you'll have a very different atmosphere. And it's a very different communication style that's required from your end. So how do you deal with cultural differences in the room? How aware are you of the requirements of cultural differences in the room? So what they need from you in this moment, that is what is most important when it comes to other awareness. You can also put it in the famous words of what's in it for them. Why are they here today? What are they looking at walking away with from this meeting with you? Understanding what it is that others are looking for is the key to being successful as a leader, as a manager, as a person. Lastly, we are looking at self-awareness. And when we talk about self-awareness, there are basically 2 different categories here. The first one is internal self-awareness, meaning understanding your own emotions, understanding your thought patterns, understanding your habits as well, understanding how you are reacting to certain situations. Which triggers do you have? Which blind spots, which biases do you have? And then, of course, also external self-awareness, meaning how are you being perceived by others? What do others think about you as a leader? What kind of an impression do you leave when you're talking to others, when they meet you for the first time? Another piece that we started to touch on in our webinar 2 weeks ago. So just to complete the picture here, when we're looking at situational leadership, it's these 3 areas that are most important for you to master: situational awareness, other awareness, and self-awareness. Ultimately, the question that you can ask yourself is, what does this moment need from the situation, from this person, and from me? These 3 different areas to look at. Now, what happens if you are lacking one of these dimensions? When there is, for example, no understanding of what the situation requires, what the other person requires, or, for example, also a lack of understanding of how you will be reacting and showing up in this situation. So I brought 3 scenarios for you that we can take a closer look into. These 3 situations are all situations that I have been seeing in different coaching conversations that I've had with my clients. Many of them were actually recurring. So it's not just one person who is experiencing moments like these, but it's actually more or less a standard leadership conversation that we're talking about. So here in our scenario 1, there is a team member who seems to perform below your expectations. There is a team member that you do have a very good opinion of. This team member is always delivering very good work. This team member is accepted in their team. This team member is supporting others. But for some reason, what you've been noticing lately is that this team member keeps missing deadlines. So you are thinking, okay, what do I usually do with my team members who are missing deadlines? Well, maybe there's something wrong in how I am communicating the deadline, for example. Maybe I'm not communicating it early enough. Maybe my team member doesn't have enough time or enough resources to meet that deadline. So what am I going to do? Well, if you are basing your approach in this situation on your experience, you might call a one-on-one meeting with this team member and you might be saying, I have noticed that you have repeatedly missed your deadlines. So what we're going to do going forward is to have, let's begin with a weekly check-in on your progress in this project. You are telling me how everything is going. You are telling me how you're holding up with the deadlines. Okay, you start doing that. You have the weekly meetings. Your team member is as engaged as always and tells you, okay, this is how far I've come. I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. And you think, okay, this sounds really good. It seems to work now. But then again, your team member is missing the deadline and you're starting to wonder, what is happening? I am following my usual approach. The meetings took place. The team members seemed to be really engaged and gave me all the answers. And yet this happened again. In situations like these, what I'm talking about with my client is to then change the perspective. The entire situation has been approached from your perspective, from the experiences that you've made so far, from your knowledge that you have gained over the years, potentially also from the perspective of how would I want to be managed if I would not be meeting my deadlines? What would I be needing from my manager to be able to meet the deadlines? For me, it might be that weekly check-in. For me, it might just be to have an accountability partner so that I'm taking my deadlines more seriously. What happens now if you're changing the perspective? And you are, first of all, taking a closer look at this team member. What all else is this team member currently working on? What's the workload of this team member? What is happening for them? And then asking the team member in a very honest way, what is happening for you at the moment. Now, this very open and honest question might be leading your team member to say, I have too much on my plate. I have so many different projects at the moment and I don't know how to juggle them. I am trying to keep all of my deadlines, but they're all falling together and I don't know how to do it all. So your team member is not underperforming. Your team member is simply overwhelmed with all the work that they have. And if you take another closer look, if you really take a look at who your team member is, you might be realizing your team member is coming from a culture in which it is not the norm to step up, to go to your boss and to say, I'm sorry, but I need help. Or I'm sorry, I cannot do this because I already have so much on my plate. Your team member might come from a culture where it is the norm to accept what is being given to you and to do your utmost best to handle everything until there is a point where it cannot be handled anymore. So this simple switch of perspective from I would like to be treated like this, and this is how my other team members have been treated and it always worked, to who is my team member? What is their current situation? What do they need in this moment? That changed the entire dynamic. Because once you're becoming aware of what your team member needs, what the reason is that your team member kept missing the deadlines, you can then find a new arrangement. See what this team member can, for example, delegate. See which deadlines can be moved a little bit so that your team member has more time. So this is one example for situational leadership. In this particular situation, you switched from sole understanding of how you would be handling the situation to how can the situation be handled the best way for my team member. Let's take a look at other examples. Oh, but before that, I just realized what I also wanted to point out here in this context is when you are operating out of your own perspective and out of your own experiences, what's also happening is that you are acting based on assumptions that you're making. You're making the assumption that what worked best so far will also work in this situation. You're making the assumption that what would work for you would work for somebody else, or what worked for another team member will work for somebody else. Now, this is a very difficult approach when you're keeping in mind that everyone around us is different. Everyone will have their own needs, will have their own approach, will have their own reasons why something works or doesn't work. So making assumptions based on something that has worked before might not always be the best approach for you. So be open, explore the situation, ask questions, be curious about who you're dealing with, what is happening for them right now, how can you find a solution that works for both of you in this situation. So now we have scenario 2, the executive meeting where your voice disappears. And the reason why I'm laughing is because I actually also had one of these situations. Before I moved out to Dubai about 5 years ago, I was director of HR in a mid-sized organization. I had a bigger team, 17 direct reports, absolutely loved my job. And it was not just about HR, but it was about a cultural change in that organization. And we had yet another executive meeting, and we were discussing the next steps about a cultural change. Specifically, we were talking about a change in the values of the organization, because we realized that the old values weren't ever really accepted by our employees, and now also that the organization was growing significantly, we wanted to have values that would be created by everyone in the organization and would hence be accepted and lived by everyone. Now, my team and me, we had created that entire framework and we were ready to roll out the surveys that we wanted to send and to start the interviews we wanted to do in order to find these values, these new values for our organization. And in this particular meeting, it turned out that a couple of very opinionated team members in this executive meeting they were saying, well, they don't really like that idea of truly involving everyone in the organization, and values specifically should be a project that should be done top down. And I had such a strong opinion about this. And I thought, no, if we do this again, nobody is going to accept these values. Nobody is actually going to live them truly. And we're going to be where we are right now. But I didn't say anything in that moment. I was just sitting there and I was just listening how that discussion evolved. But I didn't say anything about it. And I remember that this discussion went on for 5 to 10 minutes. It was quite heated. And then when we were about to wrap up the meeting, one of my colleagues was asking, so Sabine, what's your opinion about this? And I just said, well, I need to digest this. I'll get back to you. And I left the room and I was shaking my head and I just thought, what just happened? Ultimately, this was the project that I was the owner of. I was called into that organization also because of this project. And then I was sitting there when it was making a really significant change and I wasn't getting myself involved. And why is that? Ultimately, because I completely lacked self-awareness in that moment. I was entirely triggered by my colleagues who were so opinionated. And back then, a couple of years ago, I took it as personal feedback. I thought because they were not happy with my approach, they would be criticizing me as a person. And I couldn't handle that very well. And this is why I stayed silent. So this is where your self-awareness is really coming in. Understanding when there is a heated conversation or in fact any other situation, what in there could be about your triggers. What in this situation could directly tap into your biases or your stereotypes or your prejudices, for example, when we talk about cultural intelligence. Because only this awareness will actually allow you to take a different turn and to decide, no, this is not how I want to react right now. This might be my default. This is how I usually show up. But no, I'm not going to do that today. Today, I'm going to speak up. Today, I'm going to share my honest opinion. Because today, I'm self-aware enough to understand that this would be my default reaction, and I'm not willing to take the consequences of this. So when we talk about self-awareness, really, it is an entire package of things that we need to take into account. So how we want to react is not always how we react. We might have the best ideas, we might have the best intentions, but then something happens like this, and we are not able to follow through. Most of the time, because it's on us, because there's something that's holding us back, or something that triggers us to react in a different way. So when we have identified how do I want to show up and how did I really show up, it's about identifying and understanding that gap between the ideal and your reality. And this is training your self-awareness. Now, scenario 3. This is mostly around situational awareness, situational intelligence, the meeting that needed a decision. So let's assume that you have a team. The size doesn't really matter. Let's say you have a team of 10 people. You're calling them together once a month. That's your monthly team meeting. And in this monthly team meeting, you have a structure that always works the same way. And you are a very democratic leader. So your team is very much used to bringing in their own ideas, speaking up, asking questions. It's a very interactive meeting, and all of you really enjoy this. So you've been running these meetings for, let's say, 2 years by now, and for everyone, it's routine. But now, today, it's different because there is an urgent matter in the organization that needs to be tackled, and your team is one of the teams that is responsible for a bigger piece of that project. And a decision needs to be made today. Now, your democratic approach for these monthly meetings is likely not going to work today. Why? Because your team, let's say almost automatically, will start bringing in their own ideas, how to handle the situation. They will be asking more questions. They will be commenting on their colleagues' ideas. They might also give you feedback to your ideas. And now this is going to take a lot of time until the meeting is over and no decision was made. So you have a billion ideas on the table now, but you don't know what to do. But the urgency of the situation demands from you as a leader to pick a different approach and to go in very clear-headed and to say, today, our monthly meeting will have a different structure. We will have to make a decision. And as always, your opinion matters a lot to me. Here are my 3 main decisions. What is your feedback? We will discuss that for 10 minutes. By the end of our conversation or the meeting today, we will walk out knowing what we're going to do. So this goes back a lot to what we've talked about earlier, right? That you have an approach that works, you have a specific structure, we are creatures of habit, but this structure, this approach will not always work. So understanding, in this case, the urgency of the situation will demand from you to change your structure. And you already guessed it, it's not just about your situational awareness in this particular example. It's also around your self-awareness, knowing if I let them do what they always do, I am not going to be able to change course in the middle of the meeting. I will only be able to do this at the very beginning. So that's your self-awareness that's coming in. Plus other awareness of knowing that unless you give your team very direct instructions for a new structure of the meeting, they will fall back into their usual structure and they will continue asking questions, giving you comments, and bringing in new ideas. So again, it's this trifecta that's coming together: situational awareness, other awareness, and self-awareness. So I hope that in the last 30 minutes, you have seen a few ideas and got an understanding of what situational leadership is, and also how dependent situational leadership really is on how much you know about yourself, how much you know about your preferences, your habits, how much you know about your own personality, of course. And you might be familiar with this framework by Hershey and Blanchard that is also called situational leadership. Now, in this particular framework, there are basically 4 different ways of how you can lead people, and it depends on the maturity and the motivation of the people that you're leading. In my very own understanding, this is a very good starting point to create other awareness, right? Understanding where your team stands in terms of maturity, how autonomous can they be, for example, how much can you delegate to them? Or on the other hand, how much coaching do they still need? How much guidance? And then also, of course, how motivated are they? Do they love their job? Do they want to go the extra mile? Are they someone who needs a little bit more of a push? What is not being included in this understanding of situational leadership is the situation itself. Yes, of course, I'm looking at the other person, but it's not just about that, because the other person, regardless of motivation and maturity, will show up differently in different situations. And then I will have to adapt my approach. And the same, of course, around my self-awareness. When we look at it that way, and we say we have a situation at hand that is, for example, very urgent, it's a high pressure situation, you probably never handled a situation like this before. What's the impact that this situation, this degree of uncertainty has on you, yourself? If, for example, your personality is that you want to be very well prepared, that you need a very good amount of detailed data to be able to make a decision, then you might feel completely overwhelmed in such a high pressure situation. So how are you going to handle that? How are you able to understand yourself, to calm yourself down, to be clear-headed enough to find an alternative approach to that situation? Only once you've really understood all of these 3, then you're able to really master this situation effectively and efficiently. Now, because I am very well aware that self-awareness is nothing that we can build overnight, and that being here with you and talking about a topic such as situational leadership gives you a lot of insight and understanding in a bit more than 30 minutes, but will likely not create a significant change for you in the next 24 hours, I developed a program that will help you to create complete clarity around what a situation at hand demands of you. So, in this program that I have developed for you, we have 4 different areas here. The first one is mindset. The second one is self-awareness. Then influence and inspiration, because it is so, so important, especially as a senior leader, to be able to influence others, not through authority, but because they naturally want to follow you. They naturally want to hear what your opinion is, and they value your opinion so that you can easily influence them. You also want to inspire others. Only when you inspire others, they are naturally following you. And you can create this executive presence that we've talked about last time. Clarity is the 4th pillar that you really need in order to make the progress you want to make as a senior leader. May that be starting the next position. May that be becoming part of a specific committee that you always wanted to work in. May that be a specific role within a project in your organization. Clarity around what you really want and how you can get there are the key elements to really make that progress that you're looking for. So, because this is all founded on awareness, everything that I offer to you is called the awareness advantage. Because I strongly believe that only once you have full awareness, you are able to do what you feel is the right thing to do in the right moment, and that will allow you to make the progress that you're looking for. Many leaders that I speak to have fantastic ideas. They are extremely smart. However, there's always one thing or the other that falls short. It could be confidence, not knowing how to speak up in front of others that are more senior than them. It could be clarity, not really knowing what to do next, not really knowing what they need to know or do in order to achieve what they want to achieve. It could also be that they are completely overwhelmed. I am talking to so many senior leaders who are very similar to the team member that we just spoke about in that one scenario, completely overwhelmed by all the work they need to do. They don't know where to start and they don't know where to stop. And what's falling short is knowing that they are working towards a goal that's important to themselves. So how can you gain clarity on all of this to really take full control over what you do? In this program that I developed for you, we are going to work together for 6 months. The reason why it's 6 months is simply that we are going to take a very, very detailed look at the habits that you have, how you can change them, what should be changed around them, what your biases are, which mindset you need in which situation, how you can build that influence and inspiration, and how you can build a roadmap for yourself that will take you to where you want to be. Because we're talking about creating that awareness for you, but then also putting that into practical steps that you can take, practical actions that you can take, you will have an accountability partner in this program. You will work together with somebody else in your cohort, and the 2 of you will hold each other accountable. So after these 6 months, we will have 2 additional check-in points, up to 3 months post-completion, where we are simply making sure that you are on track. And if you're not on track, what needs to be calibrated so that you can continue your journey towards success. Because this is not a program that is one size fits all, you will be taking 3 different personality assessments. One of them is around how you actually show up on an energy perspective. How are you using your energy during a typical day? How does that serve you? How does it change your behavior when you are having low energy, for example? How are you showing up differently when you're highly energized? And what can you do to maintain higher levels of energy throughout the day? The second is a Hogan assessment that will show you how you are showing up when you're stressed. Hogan is an absolutely fantastic assessment that is based on hundreds of thousands of people's insights and perspectives. And it's extremely accurate when it comes to showing you how you're showing up when you're stressed. And then we will take a closer look at that to really identify this is how you show up today when you're stressed. How do you want to show up instead? And how can we, again, bridge that gap to get you where you want to be? The last assessment is on cultural intelligence, because as it turned out today in situational leadership as well, when we're talking about other awareness, cultural intelligence is such a crucial ingredient to this. Because, of course, we are all living in multicultural environments at the moment. Or not at the moment, we will always live in multicultural environments going forward. So understanding how other cultures want to be treated, how they communicate, how they decide, how they behave, that understanding is gold for your situational leadership and beyond. I have 2 cohorts that are going to start within May. One of them starts on May 15th and the other one starts on May 17th. We will have weekly sessions, and each of these weekly sessions is going to last 60 to 90 minutes. You can find all of the information on my homepage. I have a QR code on the second last slide that you can check out. And I am really excited to meeting some of you for these cohorts. So you can either directly take a look at more information around this course, or with the right QR code, you can book a call if you like, just to understand more about the program, understand more about yourself, seeing whether this program actually makes sense for you or not. Because one of the other goals that I have with this program as well is to really put together like-minded people into one cohort, so that you don't just find an accountability partner, but that you can also start building a strong network of people who have the same interests and people who have the same growth mindset that you have. This was important for me today to introduce you to my course, and I thank you for your patience on this. Now we have about 15 minutes left, and I would love to know, what are your questions? So please put them into the comment box, and I am looking forward to answering all of them. Okay. It looks like we don't have questions for today. So I hope that everything that I told you today was insightful and gave you all the information you were looking for in terms of situational leadership. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of you in the calls or directly in the next cohort of the Awareness Advantage. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.